ACC football schedules are out. Could Miami's schedule keep them out of the college football playoff?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. We'll talk about Duke improving to 10-0 in ACC play and hoops, and unfortunately that came at the NC State Wolfpack's expense. Although NC State played them tough, Duke needed a comeback to get it done. Folks, we're in a drought for a while, Kenton, but there is an update on the ACC versus FSU legal battle. We finally have another update this week, but let's talk scheduling. Now, Kenton, obviously I cover Miami very closely on Locked On Canes. I wouldn't even say Miami necessarily has the toughest schedule in the ACC, but they've got one of the weirdest where they've got that 2 bye week in a 3-week span, which just seems like a waste of bye weeks, if you ask me. And Miami's going to have to end their season when you're possibly trying to decide an ACC championship spot. They have to play potentially in cold and bad weather, final 2 weeks on the road at Virginia Tech and at Pittsburgh. So if Miami's going to contend this year, it won't be easy.
Yeah, no. And a lot of people were, saying, oh my God, you guys are such Miami guys. And, you're complaining about Pitt and Virginia Tech. It is the end of the season after playing a bunch of games straight when your bye weeks are both before week 7. Am I correct there? I believe it's week 4 and 6?
Yeah.
That is the problem, friends. I know that people like to be anti-Miami. I get it. Miami fans make it really easy to be anti-Miami. I understand. I definitely get it. However, let's not delude ourselves into thinking, oh, well, there's much ado about nothing here. I've seen coaches complain about much ado about nothing. I've seen fan bases make the nothing burgers into mountains. This is not that. You are looking at a situation where, again, why we are having multiple teams in the ACC with bye weeks that sandwich a specific game is ridiculous on its face, because Miami is
North
the only
Carolina
one.
does as well. Yeah.
And I believe NC State does too. At some point in time, we need to look at this and say, as schedule makers, let's go back and redo this, because I think that we can do scheduling without teams having these right on top of each other bye weeks. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying Miami does have a really tough schedule, but they're not the only team in the ACC with a tough schedule. And objectively speaking, if Carson Beck is who many believe he is, right? Much like our guest who we're going to have on Friday, Brett Friedlander, believes him to be, then Miami should come through this better than I expect them to. I don't see much more than 8-9 wins maybe for that team. Some people see a lot more than that. If Carson Beck is that guy, it's very possible that they could find their way into that record, but this schedule is not doing them any favors in getting there. That's all that's being said here. Not, oh, this is so brutal. Miami's got no shot. This is a 5-win team getting ready to miss a bowl game. Nobody's saying.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, Miami has 8 home games, which is obviously a plus. 2 of those home games are very difficult. They have to open up against Notre Dame, and they play Florida in week 4. Those are both home games, but very difficult non-con games for the Hurricanes this year. Let's go through Miami's schedule, and I'll go through a couple of others, because, again, I don't think Miami, despite the weirdness of the bye weeks and having to play 7 straight without a bye week to end the year, I don't think they have the most difficult necessarily schedule in the ACC, but for Miami, they've got Notre Dame, Bethune-Cookman, should be an easy one, South Florida, which should be an easy one, and then Florida, tough one, those first 4 at home. Then after a bye week, they are at Florida State, then another bye week, then home against Louisville, home against Stanford, at SMU, which will actually be the first time they leave the state of Florida on November 1st. They play home against Syracuse, home against NC State, at Virginia Tech, and at Pitt to round out the year. And a note on that, Kenton, and you and I, of course, we're going to go head-to-head in November for that Miami versus NC State matchup. NC State will have a bye week heading in to that game, so they're going to get the extra week to prep for Miami.
Yeah, and I think that that's honestly going to be a situation where hopefully it bodes well for NC State, because Dave Doeren has been historically pretty good coming out of bye weeks. More often than not, either that team wins the game or plays a team that should have destroyed them much closer than they would have otherwise. It's very rare to see a Dave Doeren team come out flat out of the bye week. So I'm expecting them to play up to Miami. I'm expecting a really good game, despite how NC State season may be going at that point. I have them being fairly good to that point, but I am also very aware of the fact, I've said this on record and I'll say it again, NC State will not be a 6 to 7 win team next year. They will either win 5 games or less, or 8 or more. I feel extremely confident in saying that, because based on how their early season goes, they'll either come out of the gates hot and they'll figure it out right away and they'll be ready to roll, or, 3 ACC games before the month of October hits, they'll be cooked. And if that happens, then the team will pack it in. They'll know, Doeren's probably going, and we're going to, kind of have a chill season here in terms of not really competing too much. That will be determined very early. And I think that game against Miami it'll be a moment where I believe both teams know who they are by that point, and we'll be having some very definitive conversations by then.
Yeah. So the one that is considered, we could probably agree on this, to be the toughest schedule in the ACC, and not doing them any favors for a team that doesn't even know yet who their quarterback is going to be next year. The Syracuse Orange. Kenton, They are projected. There are 5 opponents on their schedule who are projected to be ranked. Yes. They have to open up the season in Atlanta, so quote unquote neutral site. Against Tennessee. You expect the Vols fans to travel very well to Atlanta for that game. We know Tennessee, it, Kenton, having played them non-con last year. That's going to be a tough one. They do have UConn at home, Colgate at home, which should be an easy one. At Clemson, good luck. Home against Duke. At SMU, home against Pitt. At Georgia Tech, home against North Carolina. At Miami. At Notre Dame. And home against Boston College to wrap up that schedule. That is an absolute gauntlet for a Syracuse team that, people forget how good they were last year, Kenton. I mean, Syracuse, they won 9. Didn't they ended up winning 10 games, or was it a 9? Because with the bowl game, but they had, I guess it was 9 wins with the bowl game. Syracuse had a really good year last year, but a lot of that was Kyle McCord.
Absolutely. A lot of it was Kyle McCord. But even beyond him, the weapons around him were fantastic last year. And I think a lot of those guys are gone this year, which is going to be tough. Yeah. That's going to be kind of tough to reconcile here. I mean, man, the reason I did the whole covering my nose is because the winners get washed in Syracuse. And I think that team's going to, they're going to be stinkier than their record implies, or than they actually are of a team. Because, I mean, this is just brutal. Think about it this way, Donno. In the first ever 12-team playoff, right? We know, hey, there's 12 teams here. Whoop-de-woo-woo-woo. They have to play 4 of them. They have to play 1/3 of their schedule is teams who were in the playoffs last year. But wait, let's take it further. Of all of the teams that were in the playoffs last year that they have to play, almost all of them are returning virtually all of their major pieces. Tennessee is returning Nico, and that defensive line comes in waves. And while Pierce was a star, he wasn't the only guy there. Clemson is returning Cade Klubnik and company. The only guy leaving that situation is Maffa. Notre Dame is returning Jeremiah Love, Jaden Greathouse. They're returning some defensive linemen that were flatly phenomenal down the stretch last year. Man, I feel for, in the words of Shaka Khan, I feel for you. I feel for you, because this one is going to be a really, really tough situation. Again, Tennessee, Clemson, SMU, who, again, I think that SMU is due to take a step back. But even with them, they returned their quarterback in Kevin Jennings, who proved to be a dude last year. So it's a really tough schedule ahead of Syracuse, and it's not favorable for them. But I really hope that they can figure out a way to at least be serviceable next year, because again, they could be a mid-level team, but this schedule will make them look atrocious if they are that.
Yeah, they objectively have the toughest schedule in the ACC. Now, the team that considered by 24/7 Sports to have the second toughest schedule within the ACC are the Florida State Seminoles, which are a major enigma heading into next year. I mean, you had another big transfer portal class because you had to, replace that 2-10 roster from last year. A lot of those guys were not invited back. And most of your coaching staff is going to be new, including 2 new coordinators after that 2-10 season. So I have no question in my mind. Florida State is going to be better. Just how much better is the question. They got a really tough schedule. I mean, they host Alabama for the season opener. And Liz, I know this isn't Saban's Bama, but that's a baptism by fire to start your schedule. They've got not Texas A&M, but East Texas A&M, which should be an easy dub. Kent State, same thing, should be, but there weren't a lot of easy dubs last year for them. At Virginia, home against Miami, home against Wake Forest, at Clemson, at NC State, home against Pitt, at Stanford, Virginia Tech at home, and then at Florida on the road. So that's a really tough schedule for Florida State. It's like in Kenton, I don't know. A lot of it's going to be based on their offensive line. Of course, Thomas Castellanos in his season there, first season there at quarterback. I mean, is Florida State a 4-8 team, an 8-4 team? Like I don't know what to do with them, but the schedule is really tough.
The former, not the latter. They're a 4-8 team. They're a 4-8 team. Here's the deal. What is going on in that program right now? You can tell me all you want, because I saw people saying, "Oh, they cleaned house," and you don't understand. Teams can change overnight in today's world. Sure. What evidence do we have that that's going to happen? Last time Norvell got to a championship, was undefeated, all those things, that team took years to build. What year was Jordan Travis in when that team went undefeated? What year was Florida State was in? Was that year 3?
Final year.
Oh, okay.
Well, at Florida State, yeah. At Florida State, it was his third year, final year of eligibility, obviously. Third year at Florida State.
Well, what about that Jared Verse guy? It had to be his first year with the team, right?
Nope. What, third year?
Third year as well.
Third year.
No, well, on the outside, receiver, that's the easiest one. Keon Coleman, I know he was a first-year guy. That Johnny Wilson guy, wasn't it his first year there as well?
No, it's not.
Those backs. Were those backs there for some time, or were they new?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Multiple years.
Okay. So I'm trying to tell people the best way I know how. You cannot just buy your way into an amazing team. Even if we talk about Ohio State spending $20 million on their roster, a majority of that money was dedicated to retaining talent. It was not spent on, hey, we're going to go out and bring in a bunch of different guys from all over the place to fill in all of these key roles. It was saying, hey, we're going to supplement where we're weak. Hey, Travion Henderson is great. He can use a compliment. Let's go out and buy us a back. Hey, Kyle McCord wasn't exactly it. Let's go get us a quarterback. But I don't think that's the most important thing in the world. Let's make sure that we pay our offensive and defensive line. Let's make sure we pay Sawyer right. Let's make sure we pay JT right. Let's make sure we pay all these guys that have been here, putting in the work, building up this team. We're going to pay them first. Florida State can't say they're doing that. They're completely reshuffling, and I don't think that that's the recipe to a successful team. I just don't.
Well, maybe they'll if they're having trouble winning on the field, and by the way, they had 3 inches of snow in Tallahassee last week, which is more than football wins that they had last year. But they're going to try to get a dub in court. There is an update on the ACC versus Florida State. We'll have that next. Guys, we got the matchup set for Super Bowl 59, and I'm already looking at my props, guys. This is who I am. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, probably Patrick Mahomes, or even betting on the coin toss, you can do that too. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Folks, I'm looking at Kansas City Chiefs -1.5. I mean, they're probably going to three-peat, right? You want to lock that in. KC -1.5. I see some value in Travis Kelce at +135 as an anytime touchdown scorer on FanDuel. So you want to check out these awesome props. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, by the way. You can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets. That's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to fanduel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure for your next listen, you check out our other shows. Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone host Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes. Shout out to our guy, Brian Smith, who hosts Locked On Seminoles. And I give Brian a shout out because Brian, he loves talking ball. You know, he travels around the country scouting players, goes to all the high school camps and 7-on-7 events. I know he hates talking about the courtroom drama. So if Smitty doesn't want to do it, we'll do it here. So there's a new update in this legal battle between the ACC and Florida State. As we've covered it extensively here on Locked On ACC. Florida State is suing the ACC. Technically, the ACC sued them first, but felt like an anticipatory filing. Florida State wants to break that grant of rights. They've wanted to get out of the ACC or maybe try to improve their situation in the ACC, force a more favorable revenue split for them. And we have, Kenton, these battling court cases that are happening with the ACC suing Florida State in North Carolina. And the ACC feels like, as the home state for the ACC home offices, they feel like North Carolina should be the only venue where this litigation takes place. Conversely, Florida State feels that, since their sovereignty is being challenged by the ACC, they feel Florida is where this should happen, which would be a friendlier venue for them. And the ACC, they want the Supreme Court of Florida to step in and pause the lawsuit in Florida, because the ACC, of course, they want some kind of a resolution or a verdict to happen in North Carolina first, hoping that Florida would then follow that verdict. So it's not only a competition of where the lawsuit takes place, but also who reaches I don't know if you call it a verdict or a resolution is probably the better way to say that first. And so a filing that was just reported on this morning, Kenton, on Wednesday morning, but it was dated Friday, January 17th. The ACC notified the Florida First District Court of Appeal it was invoking discretionary review, which would be a review from the Florida Supreme Court of a decision made by another Florida court over the district court's November denial of the conference's appeal of what they termed a judicial foul. So they are appealing to the Supreme Court of Florida to pause the case in Florida because the judge in Leon County, Florida, would not do that. Now, Kenton, there is no guarantee that the Florida Supreme Court will take up this case. They don't have to. Sometimes in matters of death penalty, which is obviously not what's happening here, you appeal to the state Supreme Court. They don't have to actually review it. So the buzz that I get is the Florida Supreme Court will probably not take this up, but the ACC would love for them to take it up.
In the words of one Nevada's future Wilburn, we got court proceedings if you thought it was a drought. But in all seriousness, I've had enough. What are these filings even doing at this point? Oh, now we've got a filing to say, hey, stop or reverse the decision that was handed down from our last filing. This is getting so tiresome and worrisome at this point, because you and I were discussing this at the beginning. And by the way, for anybody saying that, again, at Locked On ACC, we just hate Florida State because there's a Miami guy and there's an NC State guy here. Did we not say from the jump when everybody was screaming, oh, they played their last game in ACC? No, you haven't. You've got at least 2 more years left. At least 1 more year was what I believe was the deal, and it would be costly to get out of the second. Lo and behold, well, looky here. Looks like you're going to have another year in the conference. So, I mean, this is, at this point, I'm at the don't tell me no more about the labor pains, because for those of you who have children, this is the Braxton Hicks contraction of court filings. You know what that means? When your old lady thinks it's time. Yeah, exactly. When they think it's time, when they think, oh no, the mucus plug is broken, and then all the things are gonna happen, and then it turns out you were wrong, and you just got to go back home and kind of sit there like, hey, good that you're healthy. That's where we're at now, because this is, again, what are we doing here? Show me some resolution. Show me some finality. Show me something that's even relevant. Show me something that's saying, hey, this court case is going to be decided in a meaningful way because of this filing of this ruling. It's going to have major bearings on this case, which I don't feel like this one is.
Yeah, the filing itself doesn't really do anything. Now, if the Supreme Court in Florida does take this up, and if they do decide that the Leon County judge committed a legal foul, they called it, and if they do step in and say, yeah, we've got to pause this in Florida while it goes on in North Carolina, that would be a huge dub for the ACC.
Oh, absolutely.
That would give the ACC an opportunity to get a precedent ruling in a friendly venue. But you're right. Until what just happened this week with this appeal, that's a pretty routine legal thing. It would become an unroutine legal thing if the Florida Supreme Court really does step in.
Exactly. The decision is what I'm saying here is not that, hey, regardless of what happens with this filing, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that. I'm saying bring me the end result of this filing. Tell me, hey, this happened and that's what's going on here. And granted, of course, me and Donno are talking about this, so we're the ones bringing it to you. But we're saying this because this is, when you're out of football season, this becomes national news and it's on ESPN and all that good stuff. Sure. So we're talking to you about it. And that's what I have to say about this. Bring me the result of the filing. Talk to me about the result, because the result of the filing will mean a lot more than, hey, this thing happened today and it's something you should look out for. This is not Locked On Leon County Court, okay? It's Locked On ACC. We've had enough of talking about these guys struggling on the court, so we don't want to talk about them struggling in the court. And by these guys, I mean both the ACC as a whole and Florida State. Both are struggling on the court, so we do not need to hear about them right now.
I mean, these court battles have been going on for over a year now, and as of now, over a year into this thing, the ACC's grant of rights is still technically intact. No one has found the successful loophole or smoking gun to get out of it. And I'm also, I don't know if you've noticed this over the past couple of days, Kenton, that there is like renewed buzz about how North Carolina is trying to go to the SEC and there's mutual interest. And like, okay, maybe there is mutual interest, but it's like, how are you going to get out? I mean, Florida State and Clemson have been, because Clemson also, that court stuff seems to be moving slower than the Florida State stuff, but Clemson is also suing the ACC. It's been going on for over a year, and so far nobody's found a way out. So this could be 2, 3, 4 years before anybody leaves.
Boy, I would love to be those lawyers on this case. I know that somebody's kid is going to get put through school. Somebody is salivating looking at those checks, saying, ooh, you paying me how much looking at this? Because again, like Donno and I knew from the jump, court works in real life the exact opposite of Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, Judge Mathers. All those TV judges where a resolution is reached by the final 30 minutes of, or by the final 5 minutes of a 30-minute show, does not work like that in real life. In real life, court is super slow, super procedural, super, oh boy, we've had a filing and we've had an appeal to that filing and we've had an appeal to the appeal, and now we've done. That's where we are in this case. We have not hit anything meaningful. Donno, is either case in discovery? Is either case in discovery as far as you know? Any of the cases? No. Is the Clemson versus Florida State? The Clemson versus ACC, ACC versus Clemson, Clemson, Florida State versus ACC, ACC versus FSU. Are any of those 4 cases in discovery?
Nope.
So we're not even to the juicy part. We're not even to the part where Perry Mason would say, oh, so this is how you killed him. And then we would look up and say, oh, that's good. We're not there yet. We're just sitting here kind of twiddling our thumbs saying, oh, I wonder where all the procedural stuff will land us.
I wish we could go on one of those daytime judge TV shows, because if we could actually get a verdict, we could take this on. I'm looking at, is Judge Judy, is she still on? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so.
What, the People's Court, is that still a thing? We could take this on one of these shows. Let's take it on the People's Court. We'll get a verdict in 30 minutes. It's better than a year.
Well, both sides have to agree to drop the suit, and then they'll take it on into there. And
Oh,
normally,
is that how that works?
and the worst part is this: the only reason I know it's not going to happen is because normally those are court cases that would be in small claims court, but it just adds a little
Right.
drama to it.
Right.
Unfortunately, a few $100 million is more than a small claim. So
It's a large claim, I would say.
It's a fairly large claim. It's a decently large claim. So it'll be a little out of Judge Joe Brown and Judge Mathis's jurisdiction. Although I would like to see who Judge Mathis says, you're an addict. I know what you are. I know who you are. I'd love to see it.
Well, out of the courtroom and onto the court, are the Duke Blue Devils going to go undefeated in the ACC? Keep it locked right here. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure you also check out Locked On College Basketball. Our guy, Isaac Shade, who is the host of Locked On Tar Heels by day, he's the host of Locked On College Basketball by night. He and Andy Patton do an awesome job taking you through all the big games, all the big storylines as we inch closer to March Madness. Kenton, on Monday night, I really thought NC State was going to do it. They had the 13-point lead against Duke. They couldn't miss. Cooper Flagg ends up scoring 23 of his 28 points in the second half, and Duke pulls it off 74-64 against the Wolfpack. Duke remains unscathed in ACC play at 10-0. Anything you'd like to say about that? Did you have faith in the Pack like I did during the early parts of that game?
My brother and Vishnu, why? What in the world gave you faith in the Pack? One thing that I know about this year's iteration of NC State, whatever devil magic they cooked up last year to create that, ACC championship Final Four run, it's not that Kansas City lingering devil magic. It's not that that Patriots lingering. That was I wouldn't even say it's a one-off, but I don't say the success was a one-off, but that particular situation was a one-off. With that in mind, NC State has found a way to have really bad can't-get-right-itis this year. And you know who loves some can't-get-right-itis? A team that's superiorly talented to you. A team that's near you and superiorly talented to you. Oh, they love it. They adore some can't-get-right-itis. They can't get enough of it. They enjoy it. They're going to lap it up. They're going to lament. They're going to have a great time with it, and your fans are going to lament it because, of course, you get up early. I believe there were 7 for 11 in the first half shooting threes, and I believe there were 2 of 11 in the second half.
Sounds right.
You think about what happened in that game, and everybody saying, well, all Duke had to do was go to a zone, and that was it. Well, if NC State continued to shoot how they did in the first half, it would have been just fine. But unfortunately, when you go to a zone and you don't have guys who can create dribble penetration, because that's the way to beat a zone, make it collapse around you and then kick it out to a wide open shooter. We just didn't have that. We didn't have guys who could finish around the rim in this game. Marcus Hill was god awful. He couldn't throw a rock in the ocean from the beach. And so, it was a situation where Malawatch and company down low were kind of posted on the block like a mailbox, and you can't score in the paint, and Cooper Flagg is going to get his. You can make him struggle, but at some point in time, he's going to get his. Con Knipple, you can make him struggle. At some point in time, he's going to get his. So, at the end of the day, at some point in time, the guys who you knew from Duke were going to get theirs, turned it on. They got theirs, and they came at NC State's expense.
All right, so Duke is there's still a long way to go. I think 11 games left, but they're 10-0 so far in conference. And after Duke, the next best team in the ACC is Louisville, and Duke already beat them in their one and only meeting of the year. So they don't have a second affair with Louisville. So, Kenton, fact or fiction, the Blue Devils, are they going to go undefeated in the ACC this year?
I think they're too young to go undefeated. I think they take one loss because they'll
have a slip up.
They have that moment where they slip up, their shots aren't falling, and another team comes out hot as fish grease. Another team is like, hey, this game is our Super Bowl, and we're going to give it every little thing that we've got. Who knows? It may even be Isaac Shade's Dirty Foot Club over there. But somebody's going to get one off of Duke. I'm not sure who. I'm not sure how. But I struggle to believe in today's day and age that anybody can go undefeated in conference, especially a Power Four.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you who they've got left. If it is the Dirty Foot Club, they got 2 opportunities, Kenton. Yeah. So Duke is going to host them this Saturday, February 1st, Then Duke is going to play at Syracuse, at Clemson, home against Cal, home against Stanford. Also, the schedule makers made sure that Duke is not one of those teams that has to go out for that Western swing for a couple of games, so they don't have to travel out there at all this year. They host those teams, which is favorable. They'll play at Virginia, home against number 18 Illinois. So that's not a non-conference game. So they got 10 conference games left. They'll play at Miami. Home. Miami's awful, by the way. Home against Florida State. Home against Wake Forest, and then at North Carolina. Wouldn't it be fun if that was the one, Kenton, where they're 19-0 in conference play, and then they trip up? And obviously, it won't affect them much at that point, but that may be the game that gets them at the end.
Honestly, after hearing that conference schedule,
yeah,
I just got a little bit more confident in Duke. I mean, oh boy,
yeah.
This conference schedule coming down the pike is not good. That's not a scary. That's not something that I'm sitting up here saying, oh man, how does Duke get it done against the mighty Wake Forest Demon Deacons? Oh man, how do they beat a Miami team that they've already beaten by 35 this year?
Yeah.
Like, you talk about them playing against Louisville. Louisville, they beat by 11 earlier this year. So I struggle to see where exactly a loss comes in, but I just have a gut feeling that they're going to lose one. This is not my best analysis. This is not based on, hey, X's and O's. I know that somebody can do something. It's just that feeling with basketball where it's much harder to go undefeated in basketball than it is in football, exponentially.
Absolutely.
That's why you see so many more undefeated. In football, every year just about, you used to see one undefeated team. Basketball, no such luck was to be had for a reason. So, I got a feeling they'll lose one or two down the stretch, but I don't think that they're going to go on some big 3-4 game snide.
No, I'm with you on that. Guys, make sure you check out Kenton. Does awesome work at Locked On Wolfpack. Follow him on X at TGIF_Kenton. Check me out on Locked On Canes. Follow me at Locked On Canes. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.